Yo, what's going on YouTube? So I am back, and as you can see, well, at least screens would suggest that I did get my new Ryzen system, all the components in, and they're up and they're running. Now, I did show you guys the unboxing where I got the 1700 CPU, and I did give the stock cooler a shot. You know, the stock cooler, even though it is substantial, and it does have the cool LED, you know, ring around it, which is, you know, definitely cool if you're into the whole, you know, changing color schemes inside your system, LED stuff like that. It is substantial, like I say, you know, compared to the previous AMD coolers that used to come with their CPUs. You got a lot more aluminum there, a much, you know, bigger, quieter fan that runs at lower RPMs, pushes a lot more air, so again it's quieter, and it's a lot more effective. But this is still a downward facing fan, and I literally have a graveyard over here of various CPU fans that are downward facing, and I could just keep grabbing them. Different ones, but these are all downward facing designs, and I'll tell you one thing about this. The major flaw about these is that they tend to pack dust into the top part of the heatsink pretty rapidly. So you either have to have very good you know, filters on your system, and even then they tend to get clogged up, and they tend to not perform as well after a very short period of time unless you're in there constantly blowing them out, and that just sucks. So I didn't want to have that problem down the road. You know, even though I do have dust filters and I can keep my system clean if I want to, it's just a pain in the butt. So I ended up throwing my Noctua NHD 14 cooler in there, and that works obviously, you know, a whole lot better. It's a much more robust, much more expensive cooler, and as good as any, you know, all-in-one closed loop water cooler I can think of. So this is a great cooler if you're running the CPU at stock, or even up to like a you know, 3.7 gigahertz overclock on all 8 core 16 threads. This will get the job done, and it does look really cool, especially in the system with the Crosshair 6 I've got, with the active LEDs on the heatsink and the I/O and stuff like that. But ultimately just went with the big boy cooler and tossed this one out. So anyway, that is not the primary focus of this video. The primary focus of this video, because there's so much confusion right now regarding Ryzen, and people are getting all kinds of varying performance. You guys have seen, I'm sure, performance that's just all over the place in terms of you know, gaming performance. I mentioned last time, you know, Ryzen should theoretically have better, you know, 1% lows and 0.1% lows in most gaming titles than an equivalent priced Intel 4-core 8-thread CPU, such as a Kaby Lake or Skylake, you know, CPU. And there are some people out there, I'm going to give them credit in this video. There's one guy did a video, Mind Blank Tech, that is running memory at 3600 megahertz on his Ryzen system, and you can see in that video that indeed, you know, my speculation ended up being correct. If you're running a faster memory kit, the 1% lows and 0.1% lows, and even the overall average frame rate in gaming on Ryzen is superior, vastly superior to a 7700K running at even 5 gigahertz with the equivalent memory speed. So these CPUs are absolutely phenomenal for the price. They're phenomenal, period. But one very important aspect of getting the most out of these CPUs is RAM speed. And there's a couple of things that go into achieving RAM speed. And And I'm going to go over in this video, how to actually go about getting the best performance possible out of your Ryzen CPU, whether it's a Ryzen 7 CPU, 8-core 16-thread, whether it's a Ryzen 5 or a Ryzen 3 with either 4 cores, 6 cores, SMT enabled or not. All of these Ryzen CPUs and the Ryzen architecture, not the CPU specifically, but the clusters in which the CPUs come in are called CCXs, and that's essentially it's a cluster of 4 CPU cores, and then AMD has used what's called Infinity Fabric, which is a 256-bit bidirectional kind of interconnect between those CCXs, but the speed at which that Infinity Fabric operates is completely dependent on your RAM frequency. So there was another test done by Hardware Unboxed. The guy was basically running some simulated tests to see, how would these Ryzen 5 chips perform, when basically, 2 cores are working on one CCX and 2 cores working on another CCX, and how much additional latency is caused, going through that Infinity Fabric, and how does that affect gaming performance? Now he was running a 3200 megahertz kit in that video, but the largest discrepancy that he saw, even when operating on 2 different CCXs, so 2 different 4-core clusters, with either 2 cores disabled per CCX to give you a quad core, or maybe 1 core disabled per CCX to give you a 6-core configuration in a Ryzen 5. But either way, the biggest discrepancy that he saw in gaming performance, I think it was in Far Cry, and it was like 3% difference, which is within margin of error kind of stuff. It's negligible. But again, he was using a very fast 3200 megahertz kit of RAM. So you may see a more substantial, hit to performance if you're running a Ryzen 5 or a Ryzen 3, quad core or 6-core CPU that has to, basically use cores on different 4-core CCX modules, that it's going to be dependent, on that Infinity Fabric, on that interconnect more, dependent upon that speed. So you're going to want to try and get the highest RAM speed you possibly can, and that goes for Ryzen 7 CPUs as well. When you're utilizing more than 4 cores, even all 8 cores, they still have to use that Infinity Fabric interconnect to communicate with one another and to get the job done. So the bottom line is you want to have the fastest RAM speed possible, and I'm going to show you guys how to go about doing that. So I give credit one more time here. I did watch a video recently with this guy called Actually Hardcore Overclocking, and this guy he's a young guy, but he's in my opinion he's absolutely brilliant. He went over a lot of different things regarding specific memory ICs or interconnects in DDR4, and I don't know how long you guys have been doing computing. Obviously, I'm an old man. I've been in the computing because of this, for a long time, and I've had graphics cards and different types of system RAM, etc., that has used I think it's pronounced Hynix memory. And then there is always the more expensive Samsung memory. Now I've seen that on different GPUs where GPU manufacturers will try and save a few bucks by going with the Hynix memory, and typically they just don't clock as high. They run a little bit hotter. The Samsung memory has always historically, at least in my experience, been better, higher quality memory that clocks higher than does the Hynix memory. And that seems to be the case today with DDR4. So I got some notes here, and there are basically Samsung's most recent ICs for DDR4 is what they're calling a B-die interconnect, and Hynix is using, I think, their most recent IC is their AFR. Now, I purchased because of Tiny Tom Logan's video over at OC3D. I got the the Asus Crosshair 6 Hero motherboard, and I have my Ryzen 1700 CPU, and I really wanted to get at least memory that was on the vendor qualified list that Asus put out, and this memory is on that list. This is 3200 megahertz Corsair Vengeance LPX memory. This is the same memory that Tiny Tom Logan used in his video, and I assume it is what he ended up hitting 3333 megahertz with in his video. At least he states that he did, and I'll show you guys some screenshots showing that. But I reached out to him and have not got a response. I wanted to know exactly what voltages. Basically, there's things within the BIOS that are kind of like load line calibration for RAM that will allow your motherboard to feed your RAM basically more electricity if the need for it arises. So I never got an answer to that, but I did buy this memory based on that video. And I looked into it, and this is in fact Hynix memory. This is not the Samsung higher quality B-die memory. And I could kind of tell because of the price. I think it was $124 for this 16 gig kit, which is not too bad for this speed, but they definitely saved a few bucks by going with Hynix. And I just saw another video, and the guy, I looked at the video, was Mind Blank Tech, and this guy had memory operating on Ryzen at 3600 megahertz. And if you've watched this guy's video, I may have already mentioned it, but you can see that it just blows away the Kaby Lake 7700K at 5 gigahertz in gaming. The 1% and 0.1% lows are murdering the Kaby Lake system at a full gigahertz, higher clock speed and the same RAM speeds. So this is really coming down to the fact that AMD again has, coupled, basically two quad-core CPUs using this Infinity Fabric. And I mentioned in my last video that they're very likely to come out in the future with 12-core and 16-core consumer-based CPUs by just adding an additional CCX, an additional quad-core CPU onto the same die, and they'll be able to compete with Intel in terms of core count using this Infinity Fabric very, very easily. But that speed of that interconnect is completely dependent upon your RAM speed. So there's two things you want to have. The first is you want to make sure you're going to get a RAM kit that is using that Samsung B-die memory. It has lower latency for one, and it can run at higher clock speeds for two. Now the other thing that you're going to want and you're going to need is there are only actually 4 motherboards right now on the market. They're all X370 boards that have what is called an external bus multiplier, an external clock generator. And this is to change the BLK or the base clock. Now, the base clock, it's 100 megahertz at default. So typically on Ryzen, on a regular motherboard, let's say you can change, the multiplier of 100 megahertz. You can set it for 40 and get 4 gigahertz. 40 times 100, 4,000, 4 gigahertz. You can set it to, 41, 4.1 gigahertz, etc. But you need to have an external clock generator to be able to change the base clock. And this is really important for memory speeds because you need to be able to boost that base clock to be able to have that multiplier affect a higher number and get you higher RAM speeds. So the 4 boards that actually have external clock generators right now that allow you to change the BLK or the base clock are the board that I've got, the Asus Crosshair Hero 6, Gigabyte Gaming K7, and the ASRock Taichi and Professional Gaming. Those 4 boards do include an external clock generator and will allow you to change the base clock, and therefore, you know, allow you to reach those higher RAM speeds. G.skill has actually gone out and they have a new series of memory called the Flare X, which is actually available right now online. They've been sold out. So if you're thinking about ordering memory right now for your Ryzen system, I would highly recommend you go ahead and grab this kit. I just ordered mine. It should be here in a few days, so I will post some additional numbers and benchmarks that should actually be even greater than the ones I've gotten already using this Corsair LPX kit that I've got, which I've just found to be flaky unless it's, you know, lower frequencies, looser timings, which is just not what you want. Again, it ruins the interconnect speed of the Infinity Fabric. You get lower memory bandwidth, etc., and it's just not optimal, especially when you're paying, you know, for a brand new system. Even the 1700, 330 bucks, you know, is not cheap. And all of the 4 motherboards that support, you know, increasing your BLK, your base clock, that have the external clock generators, they're all pretty pricey boards. You know, they're $200 plus. So it's not a small investment. You might as well go ahead and get yourself some RAM that's going to be, you know, make your system as fast as it can possibly be. And it really does leave, you know, the Intel chips in a massive price range, you know, sucking on the exhaust of these new Ryzen CPUs. You know, again, I'll link the videos that I've gotten a lot of this information from in the description below. Check out this guy over at, you know, MindBlank Hardware, I believe it is, MindBlank Tech, and look at some of his gaming performances, his charts on those versus the Kaby Lake at 5 gigahertz, and you'll be blown away. A lot of these other guys, these other websites, these major guys like Linus, you know, they've just been missing this, and they've realized that, you know, the higher the RAM speed, you know, the better. But, you know, they haven't really done a direct thing with the CCXs, you know, the Infinity Fabric speed, the interconnect between the 2 CCXs, you know, how that is affected directly by, you know, your RAM speed, and how that affects overall system performance, especially with gaming. So anyway, you know, I'll list the boards below. You want to grab one of those 4 boards, whether you're buying a, you know, an 8-core, a 6-core, or a quad-core Ryzen system. You're going to want to have the ability to boost that base clock, and you're going to want to be able to make use of that with a good memory kit, such as the G.skill Flare X, which I will also link below. They've actually gone through and validated this kit so far only on the Crosshair 6 Hero motherboard, but surely they'll validate the kit, you know, on the other 3 you know, external clock generator having boards in the near future, but it shouldn't make a difference. You know, they've got tight memory timings and they've got insane speeds. G.skill actually has them on their website, and I'll show you some screenshots where they've actually validated the memory running at 3466. And again, the guy over at MindBlank, I keep forgetting, MindBlank Tech, has a kit, and he's using G.skill as well. I don't believe it's the Flare X, but it must be a B-die kit of, you know, similar, probably a 16 gig, you know, B-die Samsung chip having kit of RAM running at 3600 megahertz, and it makes a massive difference to performance. So I've gotten some phenomenal numbers already on my system with just the Corsair LPX with the Hynix memory in it, that won't boot past 2666, and even at 2666, anything really above 2600, unless even with loose memory timings, it's super flaky. It's just a dicey proposition. I'm gonna go ahead and return that RAM, and like I say, I've got the G.skill Flare X 16 gig kit on the way. Should be here in a few days. So I'm gonna test again. I will show you guys my numbers for my benchmarks so far, but expect an update on those soon, and I should be able to blow this numbers, the numbers I have so far out of the water. At least according, to everyone's information, on the interwebs, so far, RAM speed is going to make a massive difference to Ryzen performance. Again, whether you're going with an 8-core, 6-core, or a quad-core. So, hope this helps you guys with your choice of memory. I don't know all of the Samsung B-die, Ryzen compatible, RAM kits on the market. A lot of it's going to be dependent upon your board, what that vendor says is a qualified kit on their list, on their website. So whether you have an ASRock board, whether you have, the Asus Crosshair Hero, or you have Gigabyte's Gaming K7 board, I would call those guys, I'd go on the website and I would look and see, which kits are on the VQL, and then check those kits out independently and see which kits use the Samsung B-die memory. From what I've seen, all the guys I've seen running higher speed memory on Ryzen so far have all been using G.skill of some kind, and I have not seen anybody, there's not even a single review up on Newegg so far of this new Flare X memory that they supposedly have vetted specifically for Ryzen and for AM4 for the X370 platforms that do have those external clock generators. And you can see in the screenshots they've actually bumped up their base clock, and the multiplier is what makes that, the multiplier of that higher number, that higher base clock, not 100, but in certain cases 110, 118. Tiny Tom Logan over at OC3D supposedly again got his Corsair LPX running at 3333 using, I think it was almost 125 megahertz base clock. And I've had mine, same board, same CPU, running at 124.2, 124.4 base clock. But no matter what I do to that RAM, whether I set the SoC voltage higher to 1.2 like he suggested, whether I increase the load line calibration for the RAM, set a higher initial boot clock for the RAM, etc. Maybe he got a very, very good silicone lottery winning kit, and I just didn't. But mine will not boot over 2666, and again, over 2600 megahertz, it's just very dicey unless I put the timings down to 18 CAS latency across the board with almost, I think it's 38 or 40 latency on the bottom number there, which I forget what that is, but read-write cycles, etc. Latency shouldn't have to be that high. So my recommendation is, get one of the 4 boards that supports external clock generator, and get a kit that has the Samsung B-die memory in it. If possible, go ahead and grab that Flare X kit that's already been tested and validated to work on Ryzen platforms at 14 CAS and 3466 megahertz. Or go ahead and ping the guy over at the other website over there at MindBlank Tech and see what he's been using to get 3600 megahertz. Again, it's G.skill of some kind. I don't know what the actual SKU on that is, but I guarantee it's Samsung B-die IC memory. So anyway, shout out and props to all the guys. I've been watching to get this information. Hardware Unboxed. Credit you guys for doing the legwork and seeing the differences between performance. Having to talk between different CCXs or basically quad core, connected, kind of clusters of CPUs that Ryzen uses. Kudos to the guy over at actually hardcore overclocking. You guys should really, really watch this video. I think it's about 20 minutes long. but it's worth every minute. This guy's super intelligent, and he goes more in depth about RAM than any of the other guys I've heard, period, across the internet. And this is, I'm talking about, Jay's 2 cents. I'm talking about, Hardware Unboxed, Adored, which I love that guy, OC3D, any of the major, Linus, any of the major players. He goes way more in depth and explains just a lot more about memory in particular, and how it will impact Ryzen than really anyone else that I've seen. Also, OC3D, Tiny Tom Logan, the guy's hilarious. I like watching his stuff. They are some super long videos. They're like twice as long as mine, which is insane. But anyway, more videos hopefully for you guys soon. When that new kit gets in, I will show you guys some of my new numbers and benchmarks based, on those higher frequency RAM speeds. And in the meantime, guys, happy nerding. Hope you're having a phenomenal day or night, whatever the case may be. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.